In October last year, we investigated various allegations of misconduct by advanced midwife Yolande Maritz, who offers natural, mostly water birth deliveries at her birthing home, 𝘢𝘢𝘕. During our investigation, these 4 women all alleged that Maritz was responsible for the birth injuries and deaths of their babies.
They gave him to us and he was alive for 5 hours and then he passed away.
Yolande tried to resuscitate our daughter, literally on my chest, and they declared my daughter at 1744.
She never told us that there was any problem.
We are looking at a case of negligence.
Maritz denied all the claims against her.
Do you think that you are at all responsible for what has happened to any of these babies?
No, not at all. They want to project their guilt on someone else.
After our show broadcast in October 2020, the woman we spoke to and a few more submitted official complaints against Maritz to the South African Nursing Council, who are ultimately responsible for the registration of private midwives in South Africa. All these cases, along with a case from 2016, are still being investigated by SANC, who are unable to give us a date as to when their investigation into Yolande Maritz will be concluded. But while their investigation continues, Maritz is still licensed to practice as an advanced midwife in South Africa. After watching our story, Tanita Brown submitted an official complaint to SANC about her 2017 delivery. Tanita was pregnant with her first baby when she chose Maritz as her midwife, and she says everything seemed to be going well until her 30-week scan.
She told me that everything is okay with baby, but he is a bit smaller than he should be. But she said to me, I have nothing to worry about. It's easier to birth a smaller baby than a bigger one, and everything will be okay.
According to Tanita, at this point, her baby was measuring almost 4 weeks below its gestational age.
What should happen is if a midwife finds the baby small for gestational age, that mother needs to be referred to a specialist. A midwife is not trained to make diagnoses.
Dr. LaRue, not his real name, was the gynecologist that Tanita approached to be her backup, but he refused to work with Maritz.
We didn't have a trust relationship, and a reputation preceded her. There's too many adverse events for me to recommend my patients to go to her.
Tanita says she also explained to Maritz that her feet and legs had begun to swell and become painful, which are symptoms of high blood pressure or pre-eclampsia.
She said to me it could be the high blood pressure, but I shouldn't worry. I should just drink the magnesium and I should lift my legs up.
𝘠𝘰𝘭𝘢𝘯𝘕 was actually a patient of Maritz's when our story came out.
I would like to announce my pregnancy.
We actually moved to a bigger apartment so that I can make a nursery for my child. It had everything. I got everything for my child to an extent that we even got things that she was going to use at 2 years.
𝘠𝘰𝘭𝘢𝘯 was 39 weeks pregnant when she watched our investigation, but because she was so far along and had already paid Maritz in full, she chose to stay with her.
I decided to just give her benefit of the doubt, and I regret that. If I had made a decision to not use her, maybe my child would have been alive.
Look at how I've changed, and your father still looks the same.
𝘠𝘰𝘭𝘢𝘯 and her husband had done the baby's room. She was bouncing on the birthing ball and eating all the foods to bring on labor, but the baby wasn't coming. 40 weeks became 41, which eventually became 42.
I kept on telling her that I'm scared. She was saying that everything is fine. Some people get to 43, 44 weeks. Because she's a professional, I took her word for it.
The World Health Organization recommends an induction of labor at 42 weeks because allowing a pregnancy to continue any longer increases the risk of death for both baby and mother. A recent UK study says that from week 41 to 42, the risk of death increases by 87%. Due to this increased risk of stillbirth, all the private midwives we consulted confirmed that standard practice is for patients to be referred to a gynecologist at 40 weeks for assessment.
I wouldn't let a pregnancy go further than 41 weeks. The placenta is not designed to work longer than 42 weeks. It will stop working. Then the baby doesn't get its nutrients. You only need to have experienced 1 or 2 stillbirths at 42 weeks, and then you will never go to 42 weeks again.
Once 𝘠𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘢𝘯 passed the 42-week mark, she says Maritz did a stretch and sweep, which is a gentle, natural way of trying to bring on labor. After which, 𝘠𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘢 says she started to get a yellow discharge. Maritz told her not to worry, and they scheduled a return visit for the following day. But 𝘠𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘢 alleges that Maritz suddenly changed the plans and asked her to come in as soon as she could. On arrival, she performed a non-stress test to check the baby's heartbeat.
She said, "Oh, Chichi, I don't know why God is doing this to you. I can't feel your baby's heartbeat." And then she said, "You have to go to a state hospital. They have to confirm if your baby is really dead or not." So even myself, when I went to the hospital, I had hope that she made a mistake somehow. So, oh man.
𝘠𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘢𝘯's daughter was stillborn at 42 weeks and 3 days. Maritz has declined to comment on 𝘠𝘰𝘬𝘭𝘢's allegations against her. In 2019, Christian Brits started seeing Maritz every 4 weeks from the beginning of her pregnancy for a checkup and ultrasound.
Can you hear it?
According to Brits, at every scan, Maritz told her that the baby was fine, baby was growing, and there were no birth defects. But at around 30 weeks, Christian says she started getting a strange discharge and pains that felt like contractions.
She said, no, it's just round ligament pain and that the discharge is infection. She told me, just relax, there's nothing wrong, it's just your imagination.
This was Christian's second baby, so she says she knew something was wrong and immediately went to the hospital in spite of Maritz's advice.
I got into hospital and I was already dilated and the baby was in distress and I didn't have infection, it was actually my mucus plug coming out. They gave me pills to stop the labor and they did a sonar there, and with the sonar they told me that my baby has gastroschisis.
Gastroschisis is a birth defect where the baby is born with its bowels outside of its abdomen.
They told me that you can actually see it on a sonar from 12 weeks.
Are you saying that the scans that Yolande had been doing, she could have picked it up?
The doctors at the hospital picked it up, so she could have as well. She actually placed a scan on the gastroschisis and told me it's in umbilical cord.
Because the delivery was an emergency, the medical team needed to operate on Christian's daughter were not present. And during the wait, a section of her bowel died. Post-op, she got septicemia and eventually passed away.
The doctor came to see us and she told us, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your daughter's organs are failing. We went back into my daughter's room and about 2 minutes after she took her last breath. We spent a few hours with her, laying there with her lifeless body.
When asked about Christian's case, Maritz declined to comment. At 34 weeks, 4 weeks after Maritz first identified that Tanita's baby was small for gestational age, she went to see the general practitioner that Maritz worked with, who also flagged that her blood pressure was too high, her amniotic fluid was low, and the baby was not growing.
The general practitioner obviously called Yolande Maritz and explained everything to her, to which Yolande advised me to get pear juice to increase my amniotic fluid, also to get bed rest and to drink Similac Mom to boost my nutrients.
That same day, Tanita says she started to get serious pains that felt like contractions and she started bleeding. She was constantly texting Maritz asking her what to do.
So she told me at about 5 o'clock to please take my blood pressure, which I did, and it was 163/108. After that, she told me that I just need to take my pills, make sure that I'm taking the pills right, and I just need to wait for the meds to start kicking in.
If a patient had presented to me with a blood pressure of 163/108 combined with intrauterine growth restriction, by definition that is preeclampsia, and that's a very dangerous condition. We admit them immediately to the hospital and we start a workup.
At around 7 p.m. that evening, according to Tanita, she couldn't handle the pain anymore, and Maritz finally agreed that she should go to the ER.
I started bleeding excessively. It was absolutely horrifying. We were so scared. There was so much blood, and we got in the car and we drove so fast to the hospital.
When Tanita arrived at the ER, Dr. 𝘠𝘂𝑫 was the gynecologist on call.
Yeah, when I first saw Tanita, I was angry because it was something that if she was my patient, I could have avoided. She had preeclampsia and she had intrauterine growth restriction. And if it is preeclampsia, we know they're going to deliver earlier. And if you don't intervene earlier, it often ends up in an intrauterine death or a rupture placenta, which exactly happened now.
It was a matter of 10 minutes and baby was out. He was blue. It was the scariest time of my entire life that I thought my baby was going to die.
Tanita's placenta had pulled away from the wall of her uterus, which means that the baby had asphyxia or was no longer getting oxygen.
The gynecologist at the hospital told us that if I had arrived there 5 minutes later, I would have bled to death and my baby would have died from lack of oxygen.
Tanita's son left the hospital after 5 weeks in the neonatal ICU and is now 3 years old. When we approached Maritz with regards to Tanita's allegations, she again declined to comment. Regardless of the magnitude of these complaints, SANC re-registered Maritz for 2021. We requested an interview with SANC, but they declined, stating that they are busy following the legislative process of the Nursing Act and will not be party to trying Ms. Maritz in the media.
I would really like her to stop practicing so that she can just stop putting babies' lives and mommy's lives in jeopardy.
I don't wish anybody to go through what I went through. I want it to be stopped. I want Yolande to be stopped.